There also would have been peace in the next year if the Nephites had not argued about the lands of Lehi and Morianton, which neighbored each other near the sea. Those in Morianton claimed part of the land of Lehi. They were about to fight when their brethren in Lehi fled to the camp of Moroni, and because their cause was right, asked him for help. When Morianton, who was the leader of the Nephites in the land of Morianton, found that this had happened, he and his followers became frightened that Moroni would command his army to destroy them. So he told his people that they should flee to the land in the north, which was covered by large bodies of water, and live there. This would have happened if Morianton had not become angry with one of his maidservants and had not beaten her. This maidservant ran away to the camp of Moroni. She told Moroni what Morianton had planned. The people in the land of Bountiful, or rather Moroni, feared that if Morianton carried out his plan, it would mean the loss of their liberty. So Moroni sent an army to stop the people of Morianton. The army, which was led by Teancum, did not stop them until they had reached a narrow place near the borders of the land Desolation. The people of Morianton had become so stubborn that they began to fight their brethren. In the battle, Teancum killed Morianton, and soon the soldiers of Teancum were victorious. Teancum returned to the camp of Moroni with his prisoners. The people of Morianton returned to the land of Morianton and peacefully joined the people of Lehi. When peace was restored among the Nephites, Nephihah, the second chief judge, died, having filled the judgment seat in perfect righteousness before God. The son of Nephihah, whose name was Pahoran, was appointed to take his father's place, to be chief judge and governor over the people. He began his reign at the end of the 24th year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi. At the beginning of the next year, a contention began over Pahoran. Some of the people wanted some laws changed, but Pahoran refused. These people became angry and wanted Pahoran removed from office. They were called Kimg-men, because if the laws were changed according to their wishes, the free government would be replaced by a king. Those who supported Pahoran were called freemen, and they would maintain their rights and their religion by a free government. The people voted on the matter, and Pahoran won. So the Kimg-men were silenced, although they were highborn, and received support from all those who wanted power over the people. The situation became even more critical for the Nephites because Amalickiah once again stirred up the Lamanites against the Nephites. Having sworn to drink Moroni's blood, he quickly and effectively prepared the Lamanites for war. Amalickiah began his attack against the Nephites about the time the Nephites were settling the trouble that the Kimg-men caused Pahoran. When the Kimg-men heard that the Lamanites were coming, they were glad in their hearts. They refused to take up arms because they were angry with the chief judge and the people of liberty. When Moroni saw the situation, he became very angry toward the Kimg-men, whom he was trying to defend. He sent a petition to the governor of the land, which expressed the will of the people. It asked for the power to make the deserters defend their country or to be put to death. His petition was granted, so Moroni sent his army against the Kimg-men. The Kimg-men who opposed Moroni were killed, 4,000 in all. The remainder of the Kimg-men surrendered to the standard of liberty. So Moroni put an end to the false cause of the Kimg-men, who thought that they were better than their brethren. In the meantime, the Lamanites had come into the land of Moroni, into the borders by the sea. The defenses of Moroni were not strong enough, so Amalickiah drove the inhabitants before him, killing many, and took possession of the city and its fortifications. Those who fled from Moroni came to the city of Nephihah, which prepared itself along with the city of Lehi to defend itself. But Amalickiah did not send his men against Nephihah, but kept them down by the seashore. Not knowing which city would be attacked next, the Nephites could not defend all cities, so they fell to Amalickiah one by one: Nephihah, Lehi, Morianton, Omner, Gid, and Mulek. The Lamanites marched on to the borders of the land Bountiful, driving the Nephites before them and killing many of them. But Teancum, who had killed Morianton and led his people in their retreat, met Amalickiah and his army and stopped them, because Teancum's warriors were skillful in war and much stronger than the Lamanites. The armies fought until dark, the Lamanites receiving much the worse of it, and many of them dying in the battle. Then Teancum and his men pitched their tents on the borders of the land Bountiful, and Amalickiah and his men pitched their tents on the seashore. During the night, Teancum and his servant crept into the camp of Amalickiah and found Amalickiah and his men in a deep sleep because of the hard fighting of the day. Teancum went quietly into Amalickiah's tent and drove a javelin into his heart. Amalickiah died instantly, without awakening his servants. Teancum crept back to his own camp. He awoke his men and told them what he had done. The Lamanites awoke the next morning, the first of the new year, and found Amalickiah dead in his tent. They also saw that Teancum was ready to fight them, and became very frightened. Abandoning their plans, they retreated into the city of Mulek to find protection behind its fortifications. The brother of Amalickiah, Ammoron, was appointed king over the Lamanites. He commanded his people to maintain the Nephite cities that they had taken by the shedding of much blood. Teancum had received orders to attack and retake, if possible, the city of Mulek. But the city was too well fortified and defended, so he returned to the city Bountiful to wait for Moroni. Moroni and his army arrived, and in the 28th year, Moroni and Teancum and the chief captains held a council of war. Moroni made a plan to decoy the Lamanites out of their strongholds. He told Teancum to take a small number of men and march down to the seashore. Seeing that Teancum had only a small force, the Lamanites marched out to conquer it. Teancum retreated northward on the seashore. Seeing Teancum retreat, the Lamanites pursued him with vigor. At this time, Moroni and his army marched into the city and took possession of it. Lehi and a small army of Nephites who were left to protect the city Bountiful met Teancum near the city before the Lamanites arrived. When the chief captains of the Lamanites saw Lehi's army, they retreated in confusion to save the city of Mulek before Lehi could catch them. They were, of course, tired, and Lehi's army was fresh. But the Lamanites did not know that Moroni's army had taken the city of Mulek behind them. Lehi did not want to fight the Lamanites until he could join Moroni's army. Lehi's army advanced slowly. Then to the rear of the Lamanites, Moroni's army appeared, and the Lamanites were almost surrounded. Moroni commanded his men to attack, and so did Lehi. In the terrible battle that followed, Moroni was wounded, and Jacob was killed. The rest of the Lamanites were confused and afraid, not knowing what to do. Moroni said to them,
"Surrender your weapons, and we will stop the bloodshed."
The chief captains, then their men, threw down their weapons of war, and they were forced to march with their brethren into the land Bountiful. Moroni had forced the Lamanites to bury their own dead and the dead of the Nephites. Then Moroni went to the city of Mulek with Lehi and gave him control of it. Not only were these men alike, but they loved each other and were loved by all the people of Nephi. Moroni commanded the Lamanite prisoners to dig a ditch round about the land, or the city Bountiful, then build a breastwork of timbers against the inner bank. They threw dirt up against the breastwork. When the work was finished, the city of Bountiful was an excellent stronghold ever after. But in the west, some Nephite cities had been captured by the Lamanites. As ever, the Ammonites would not take up arms, so they were brought down into the land of Zarahemla, where they could be better protected. When the Ammonites saw how terribly the Nephites were suffering for them, they wanted to take up arms and help fight the Lamanites. Just as this was about to happen, Helaman persuaded them not to break their oath. If they did not, they would not lose their souls. But the Ammonites had 2,000 sons who had not taken the oath. They entered into a covenant to fight for the liberty of the Nephites at the cost of their lives, if necessary, and never to give up their liberty. They asked Helaman to lead them. They were young men of great virtue, courage, and strength, who loved the Lord and obeyed his commandments. At this time, the 28th year of the reign of the judges came to an end. In order that he might advantageously exchange prisoners with the Lamanites, Moroni wrote a letter to Ammoron, threatening him with God's punishment for the wickedness of the Lamanites. He wrote,
Ammoron, because you are a child of hell, you will probably continue to be evil. But the Nephites will maintain their freedom and their religion. You must withdraw or die. I will not exchange prisoners, except that you surrender a man, a wife, and a child for one Lamanite prisoner. If you do not agree, my warriors will hunt you down, even in your own land. Until now, we have only defended ourselves. But we will come against you and your people in your cities and lands. We will seek the land of our first inheritance.
Ammoron was very angry when he read Moroni's letter. He wrote to Moroni,
I will avenge my brother's death. Your threats mean nothing to me, and I will order my armies to attack you. Your fathers robbed my fathers of the right to rule. If you let us rule, we will stop the war, but we will gladly exchange prisoners with you on your terms to save food for our warriors. We will fight you eternally and either conquer you or kill you.
When Moroni received this message, he became even more angry, because he knew that Ammoron knew that the cause of the Lamanites was not just. He said,
I will not exchange prisoners unless Ammoron withdraws his purpose. I will not let him get more power than he has, but I know where he keeps our prisoners, and I will fight the Lamanites until they ask for peace.
After Moroni said this, he ordered a search among his men for a descendant of Laman. One was found, a man named Laman, who had been a servant of the king whom Amalickiah had murdered. Moroni commanded him to take a small number of men and go to the guards of the Nephite prisoners who were in Gid. The guards welcomed Laman because he told them that he was a Lamanite who had escaped from the Nephites. Laman had brought some wine with him, which the guards were happy to drink, so they became drunken and fell asleep. Laman and his men returned to Moroni and told him what had happened. This was according to Moroni's plan. Moroni sent weapons to the prisoners, who armed themselves very quietly while the Lamanite guards were sleeping. When the guards awoke, the prisoners could have killed them. But Moroni did not want to commit the injustice of having his enemies killed unnecessarily. When the Lamanites awoke in the morning, they found all the Nephite prisoners armed within the city, and Moroni's army surrounding them outside. The Lamanites saw that it was no use to fight the Nephites, so the chief captains gathered all the weapons of war, threw them at the feet of the Nephites, and pleaded for mercy. Moroni took these Lamanites as prisoners of war. The Nephite prisoners became a strong part of Moroni's army. Moroni commanded the Lamanite prisoners to strengthen the fortifications of the city of Gid. Then they were taken to the city Bountiful to do the same thing. The Nephites began to win their lands and possessions from the Lamanites, and were very successful in defeating the attacks and intrigues of the Lamanites. The reason for their success was that they remembered their God and obeyed his commandments. They were alert and cautious and avoided the evil plans of the Lamanites. Moroni decided to attack the city Morianton, which had become a stronghold of the Lamanites. On the second day of the first month of the reign of the judges, Moroni received a letter from Helaman.
My dearly beloved brother, Moroni, I want to tell you about the fighting here. The 2,000 young Ammonites whom I lead, who are the descendants of Laman, have been a mighty help to the cause of the Lord and of the Nephites. I marched them to the city of Judea to help Antipas, the leader there. The city was weak after much warfare with the Lamanites. Antipas and his men were working mightily to fortify it. The Lamanites saw that our strength was growing, so they began to attack us for fear that we would grow even stronger. We saw an opportunity. Antipas ordered me and my 2,000 sons to march near the city of Antipara, as if we were carrying provisions to the city beyond, in the borders of the seashore. Antipas then marched forth with part of his army as we approached our supposed destination. As you know, the strongest army of the Lamanites was in the city Antipara, so it came out to fight with us. So we led this largest and strongest force of the Lamanites away. The Lamanites went so far then when they saw the army of Antipas behind them, they just kept following us with the idea of killing us before Antipas arrived. We kept going all day because we could not stand against them. The next morning we saw that the Lamanites were near us, but they stopped suddenly. I did not know whether Antipas was close behind, but I said to my sons, the Lamanites may be preparing a trap for us, but do you want to fight them? Moroni, their response was more courageous and magnificent than I have ever heard from any warriors. They said to me, Father, our God is with us, and he will not let us die. Let us fight the Lamanites, for they will not let us alone. In this way we will help Antipas too. They then went into battle, not fearing death, but with only the liberty of their fathers in their hearts. They knew that their God would deliver them, and this their mothers had taught them. We saw that the Lamanites were fighting the men of Antipas, who, with the loss of some of their leaders, were falling back. The Lamanites began to pursue the men of Antipas when we fell upon them. We began killing them in such great numbers that their army turned around to fight us. This encouraged the men of Antipas to regroup and fight aggressively against their rear. So the Lamanites were surrounded. We killed so many of them that they threw down their weapons, surrendered, and became our prisoners. Then I looked around to see if any of my sons had been killed. But to my great joy, I saw that not one of them had been killed. Never have men fought with such miraculous strength. My 2,000 young men have marvelously defended our cause, our liberty, and our civilization. They trusted in God, loved the gospel, and obeyed God's commandments. That is why God protected them in battle.